Today is the last of a number of messages I've been talking about who is our neighbor. If we were to draw a circle 20 miles, 30 miles around our church, who are the folks that we're supposed to be reaching? I would say everybody. Years ago, there was a church and in California, and they called it Saddleback Sam, and that was their market, if you put that. That's the person they wanted to reach, and they described this person as a specific character. But you know, we're supposed to reach all the people, not just some of the people around us. And we have a diversity of a group of folks around us. And we've talked about some of the folks. We've talked about the ones who are lonely. We've talked about the widows. We've talked about people who are parentless, young people. We've talked about different groups. And today I want to talk about the outcast. Outcast. Now, we could define outcast in many different ways. I also realize that some of the people that live around our church are financially pretty good. So I didn't want to ignore those people, because you can be financially pretty good and need God just as much as anybody. And so I wanted to talk about them. And so we're looking at a person who is both an outcast and wealthy. So it covers both of them. It's the story that is in Luke 19 that Jesus tells. I want to invite you to look at that with me. Luke 19, beginning in verse 1. It said, Jesus entered Jericho and was just passing through. He was going on the way to Jerusalem, and there was a man there by the name of Zacchaeus, and he was a chief tax collector, and he was wealthy. So, chief tax collector and rich. What does that mean? Well, it means that either they put him in charge of an area, or that he just does the area by himself, but the certain area that was his to collect money from. The Romans had a great system for this. They wouldn't come in themselves and take money from people. They would get somebody who lived in that community, who was Jewish, that knew that community, so that they could go to this one house, this tax collector, and he could say, yeah, I know the house looks rough, but I know he's got 90 sheep behind the barn. And so we've got to tax that. And so you had these people that, these tax collectors, which were very much disliked. I mean, not many people like the IRS guy coming to your house or give you a call. And so this was the man. He was chief tax collector, and he's rich. By the way, 98% of the people in Jesus' day were poor. I'm talking about not knowing where your next meal came from. So you had the ultra-rich and the poor. And Zacchaeus was the ultra-rich. Verse 3, and he wanted to see who Jesus was. Jesus has been ministering now for 3 years, and he's never seen him. But because he was short, I don't know if any of y'all know what that's like. Some of us do. I'm not the tallest one. I'm getting shorter every time I go to the doctor. But because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. And so he ran ahead, and he climbed up a sycamore tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. Now, I was thinking about what he did, part of it because he was short, and part of it because he was smart, you know. I was trying to think of an example in my own life. So last year, not this year, but the year before, John, my son's guy in his church, won tickets to go see the Masters, the practice round at the Golf Masters tournament, which is very prestigious, very expensive. But he won in a lottery. You still have to pay. It's just not very much. And so he got John, his youth pastor, to go, and he went with his son, and John took me as his dad, and we had a terrific time. And we walked all over that hilly course and saw these folks, and there was big crowds. And so there was one person that John really wanted to see, which was Rory McIlroy, okay? And so really wanted to see him. And so what we did is we knew that there was this one hole that we had spot out that didn't have many stands around it. And so we thought, well, what if we go to this one spot when he's getting close and we'll just be able to get really up close. And we did that. And we got really close to this guy that we, that John really likes. And we got to see him hit the ball and it was, fun. Anyway, this is what Zacchaeus does. He knew Jesus was coming this way. He had to go by this way. And so he climbs up in a tree. It's a sycamore tree. It had large limbs that were low, large and low limbs and large leaves. Okay, so he could hide. It wasn't an olive tree, which has real little leaves. It was a sycamore tree that had big leaves. And so because people hated him, he could go up there and hide. And so that's what he did. And continuing on, if you go a couple other verse slides down, there we go. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up, Zacchaeus hiding in the tree. Jesus looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come on down here immediately. I must stay at your house today. I don't know why he said I must stay. I think maybe because Jesus' mission was for people like Zacchaeus, the outcast. That was his mission. And so Zacchaeus came down at once and he welcomed him gladly. That's all Jesus had to do, is say, come on down here, Zacchaeus. And he welcomed him glad. He was happy. And all the people saw this. You'd think they would be happy, but where did they go? They began to mutter. They began to mumble. They began to grumble. And he is gone to be the guest of a sinner. In the King James, it says, all the people murmured. Okay, everybody murmur a little bit. Just murmur. Do some murmuring. There you go. There you go. There you go. This is the only time in the Bible where it doesn't just say just the Pharisees murmured or the Sadducees murmured or the Jewish people murmured. It says all the people murmured. All the people murmured because here was Jesus spending time with this outcast people that they all hated. But Zacchaeus was glad. It was changing his life. And even though they murmured, Zacchaeus ignored the murmur. And he stood up and he said to the Lord, look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. Half to people I've never even met before. Half of everything I got to the poor. And if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount, which was the law in the Roman law system. If you cheated somebody, if you rustled some of their cattle or sheep or something, you had to pay back 4 times. He said, if I'd done that, I'd do it 4 times as much. So this guy was repenting, but in the Bible, repentance is called metanoia. That means change. It means turning a different direction. Repentance is not just saying, oh, Lord, come in, I believe in you. No, it's changing your life. Repentance has change attached to it. And here this man that was hated, this outcast, he repents, he has this metanoia experience, and he changes. And he says, I'm going to give money, half of it to the poor, everything I got. And then if I've cheated anybody on top of that, I'm going to pay him back 4 times. And Jesus said, today, salvation has come to this house, not only to him, but probably to his family members, because this man too is a son of Abraham. In their world, to be forgiven, you had to go to where? You had to go up Jerusalem. You had climbed the hills up to Jerusalem and you had to make a sacrifice and then you were forgiven. But no, here Jesus is saying, no, today salvation has come to this outcast because he is the son of Abraham. He's one of God's chosen. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Now we talk like this a lot, we should, about we need to reach the lost. Do you know there's only 2 times in the Bible it talks about the lost, and this is one of them? The outcast, the ones who are rejected by everybody else, even the rich people that are their outcast. And so as I was studying this, I come up with 5 questions. I write out questions, surprises, things when I read and I think, boy, that's a surprise. What happened? What caused that? And so I want to go through these 5 questions with you. And the first 2 I want to take together. The first one is this. Why would Zacchaeus, a rich man who probably drove around in an Escalade, a man who probably lived, let's say, in King's Mill, in the big house on the river, a man who had everything, why would he run? Jewish men did not run. You shouldn't do that. He ran and he climbed a tree. How many of you guys, when's the last time you climbed a tree? We just don't climb trees. I don't, male. I'm afraid I'll fall out of it. But he climbed a tree to see somebody. What would make this rich man climb, 98% poor, he's the 2%. He climbed a tree. And second with that, I'm going to take these 2 questions together. Why did Zacchaeus become so repentant and generous so quickly? All Jesus did say, come on down. I must go to your house for dinner. That's all it took. Why did Zacchaeus become so repentant? Well, as I was studying this, I read some good commentaries. Didn't really find an answer, but I was listening to other messages. Sometimes I listen to other pastors, and I found this message by this pastor. It was absolutely fabulous. His name is Simon Norwood. He's not a famous preacher at all, but it was online, and he did this. He's a graduate of Liberty University. Good for Hannah. And this was in 2015, and he happened to be a black pastor, and he had this church that talked back to him, and somebody played the organ while he's preaching, and it was just fabulous the way he did it. And I want to tell you what he did and what his experience. He used his pastoral imagination to give Zacchaeus' backstory, because everybody's got a backstory. Now, this isn't in the Bible, but it could have happened this way. And so he asked the question, the title of his message was, what drove Zacchaeus up a sycamore tree? And that's a good question. What drove Zacchaeus up a sycamore tree? Well, he says this, and I'm going to do this with you. So I want you to use your imagination and go back in the day when Zacchaeus was making his rounds, okay? And let's just go along with him and just you see him as he's making his rounds, collecting his taxes, okay? And so let's say he goes to this first house, which you can find this story in Luke 18, and in the house, he gets to the house, and the grass is high, and the shutters are loose, hanging from the windows, and it looks like it hadn't been painted in forever. I mean, it's in disrepair. And he knocks on the door because you know that there's a blind guy that lives here. And he knocks on the door, and this blind guy comes, and he can't see. So, well, who is it? And he says, I'm Zacchaeus, and I'm come to collect my money because it's tax time. And the blind man says, well, Zacchaeus, I've been paying for some surgery to get these scales off of my eyes, and so I'm sorry, I need a little time. I need a little time to pay you back because I don't got the money right now. And he says, well, I tell you what, how much time you need? He said, I tell you, give me 30 days. 30 days. You might be familiar with that. Get 30 days to get your money back. And he says, all right, but in 30 days, I got to come back and get my money. All right? So that's the first person he visits. So we go along with him. He goes to visit somebody else, another house. And he goes to the next house, and he knocks on the door, and there's a woman that comes to the door, and she's white as a sheet. I mean, she looks anemic, and she's lethargic. She looks really rough. Her hair is a mess, and he knows that she's a woman that's had some issues, physical issues with bleeding and things. And so he says, well, I know you got some problems, but, I'm the tax collector, and everybody's got to pay the taxes, and I'm coming. I need my money. And she says, well, I'm sorry. I've been going to the doctor, and the doctor has been trying to help me, and I've been paying him, and so I'm a little low right now. And so can you give me some time? And so Zacchaeus is thinking, oh, gosh, here we go again. Time. Well, how much time do you want? He said, I need 30 days. And so he said, I tell you what, I'll give you 30 days, but I'm getting tired of this. And when I come back in 30 days, I want my money. You see, the way the Romans did this is the Romans wanted their money every month. And so what he collected, he had to pay part of it to the Romans. And so if they weren't paying, and he was in trouble. So anyway, that's the first two persons. Then he keeps on going, and we're walking along with him. And now he comes to a house that's next to a cemetery, a graveyard. He knocks on the door. Woman comes to the door, and she seems kind of shy. And so he says, can I speak to your husband? Can I speak to the man of the house? And she says, he's not here. He's in the back in the cemetery. He is cutting himself with stones. And he's acting crazy. He's acting like a lunatic. He's off his meds. He's been acting awful, playing a crazy fool. And he's back there, and he hadn't worked and I don't know when. And I know Zacchaeus, I owe you the money, but I don't got it because he's not working. And I've been taking care of the kids. And so he says, well, how much time do you need? 30 days. So now he's getting really tired of this. So he goes one more house. The last house, he knows that this house, they've been having some trouble. So he knocks on the door, and a woman comes to the door. She's crying. She's been crying. And she says, I can't deal with this now. I'm on the way to bury my son. Okay? And so we're in a crisis. He died, and we got to take him and have a funeral for him. And so Zacchaeus, I said, okay, I'll give you 30 days. 30 days, I'm going to come back. Okay? So that's the experience you have with Zacchaeus. Now, 30 days later, Zacchaeus starts going back to these people. He revisits these houses one at a time. We're using our imagination. The first house he visits, the grass has been cut. The shutters have been fixed. The house has had some paint on it. And he goes, what's going on here? He knocks on the door. This guy, eyes wide open, meets him at the door and says, hi, Zacchaeus, and shakes his hand, looks him straight in the eye. And he says, I'm sorry, Zacchaeus said, I must be at the wrong house. I'm looking for the blind man's house. And he says, you got him. That's me. He says, well, you're not blind anymore. He said, yeah, I know that. He said, Jesus come through town, and he touched my eyes, and now I can see. And since my eyesight's got back, I've now got some work in, and so here's your money. Now, in the sermon that Simone did, this is the time where he would sing the song Amazing Grace, Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was blind, but now I can see. Yeah. And it was great. It was great. Everybody sang it with him, okay. And then he goes on to the story, and he says, Mr. Zach went to the next house, and the next house was a woman's house, and she had looked anemic. Well, he knocks on the door, and she comes, and she puts her hands on her side and says, well, hello. And she's looking good, and she's got her hair cut, and she looks really put together. She's beautiful, wonderful color. And he says, well, I don't know if this is the right house. I'm looking for the woman that has the physical issues with bleeding. And she said, that's me, but I don't have that no more. And he said, well, what happened? She said, well, Jesus was in my town, and so I heard that he could heal people, and so I thought if I just snuck up, I wouldn't touch him on the flesh, but if I could just touch the hem of his garment. And she said, I did it, and I was healed. And because of that, I don't have to pay the doctors, and I've been able to work, and so here's your money. I got your money, Zacchaeus. And Zacchaeus is feeling pretty good about this now. So next time he goes to this other house that he'd been at. And by the way, he sings a song after this one too. I'm not going to sing it because I don't know it. But then he gets to the next house, and there's this graveyard, and he thinks it's the same house, and so he knocks on the door, and this time the man comes to the door, and he looks good. He's dressed right, and he said, "Yes, sir. How can I help you?" And he said, "I'm Zacchaeus, but I understand that you've had some mental health issues." He said, "I used to, but I'm fine now." He said, "Jesus come along and he took the demons out of me and sent them into some pigs." And he said, "Now I'm doing fine. The doctor said that I got clear health. And so I've been able to work. And so I got your money, Mr. Zacchaeus. Here it is." Last house. He goes to the last house and he's feeling pretty good now. He knocks on the door. A little boy comes to the door. And the little boy said, "Yes, sir. How can I help you?" He said, "Well, I'm Mr. Zacchaeus. Can you please go get your mama? I know she's been through a lot. You're losing your brother and everything, but I need to talk to her about some stuff." And he says, "What do you need to talk to her about?" He said, "Well, there's some taxes, and I know you lost your brother, and that's a hard thing." And he said, "We didn't lose my brother. I'm the only son of her." And he says, "Well, no, that can't be because her son died." And he said, "I was dead, but now I'm alive. I'm back alive again." He said, "What do you mean you're back alive?" And he said, "Well, all I know is that I was dead, and I was just laying there, and they were going to do the funeral, and Jesus touched me, and all of a sudden my heart started beating again, and my eyes opened up, and let me tell you, Mr. Zacchaeus, it's good news for you, because my mama got a refund from my funeral, and now your money is right here." Now listen, we don't know that those things would have happened, but they could have happened. If that happened, if some of those things had happened, if Zacchaeus could have personally experienced what Jesus had been doing for the last 3 years, and chances are this wasn't that big an area. If he was in Galilee taking up taxes, it could have very well happened like this in some sense. And that would have changed the way Zacchaeus went to find Jesus, climbing up in the tree. And then when Jesus met him, he said, I know who Jesus is. And here he is. So that's the first two questions. Third questions. Why did Jesus notice one person in a great crowd? I mean, you think about that. There was a lot of people there that day. I imagine that if somebody's coming to see the president of the United States, Donald Trump, and they're in a long line, he's probably got a protocol guy or girl in his ear, and she'll know who's next in line. And so when the next person in line is coming, they tell him who the name of this person is, and he shakes their hand and says their name, and then they're telling him the next person, and shakes their hand and says their name. But you see, Jesus never did that. Jesus never acted like he was juggling oranges when he was talking to somebody. He was always right there. Here he knew Zacchaeus' name. He saw him for what he was. He connected to him. Imagine if Jesus came to this church this week and he walked up to one of us who knows what some of the things going on, and he said, "Well, how you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm doing pretty good." Jesus says, "Well, how's that old kitchen doing you've been renovating? Did you get the counters leveled? I knew I had some trouble with that." And you'd think, well, how did he know about that? Jesus knows about everything. And Jesus knew what was going on with Zacchaeus. He came for Zacchaeus. He wasn't on his way to Jerusalem. He was on his way to Zacchaeus. He made a line for that tree, walked right up under it, looking for Zacchaeus. He looks for the outcast. 4, why did Jesus accept hospitality from a person hated by the people? I mean, this must have been confusing for them, because here is this person everybody hates, and yet Jesus accepts hospitality from him. Now, if you made this a modern day example, suppose You were a campaign manager for Jesus, okay? And let's say you're on a plane going around seeing people all over the world with Jesus, and you land in Las Vegas. Jesus gets off the plane, and he walks up to, let's say, a big black, I don't know, Escalade or something, with tinted windows, and the windows go down, and there's this mafia guy in the, let's say, Joe Rigatoni, and he's in the back seat of the car. And this mafia chieftain from Las Vegas says, hey, Jesus, will you meet me at my hotel at the Sands tonight? I want to have dinner with you. And Jesus says, I love to, and gets in the car. Now, if you were Jesus' campaign manager, you'd say, geez, that's a bad idea. That's going to be in all the papers tomorrow. Everybody's going to find out about who you're hanging out with. But Jesus came for the lost. He didn't care if he was hated by the people. Number 5, why was a man who did so much real harm restored publicly by Jesus? Why did he do this in front of everybody? Today, you were lost, but now you're found. You see, people expected the Messiah would conquer evil. I mean, if you look at what John the Baptist said, Luke, earlier in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 3, verse 16, John answered them, I'm going to baptize you with water, but one who's coming more powerful than I am, the straps of whose sandals I'm not worthy to untie, he will baptize you with Holy Spirit and fire. His winnowing fork is in his hand. This is like a pitchfork that winnows out the bad wheat to clear his threshing floor, and together all the righteous people together and unrighteous people throw them out into his barn and burn up the chaff with unquenchable fire. They thought that Zacchaeus was the chaff. And here the Messiah is welcoming the chaff. You know, I think sometimes we get this idea of what it's going to be like when Jesus comes back. Listen, a lot of people who go to church may not wind up in heaven. You know, it's not sometimes everybody thinks is on the right track. Jesus knows our hearts. He knows who we really are. And Jesus has come for the lost. He's come for those people that our culture sometimes in the church rejects. Maybe it's the rich who take advantage of the poor. Maybe it's the incarcerated. Maybe it's those who have substance use disorders. Maybe it's those who are homeless. Maybe it's those who have sexual orientation that's kind of askew, according to, what the Bible teaches. And so we look at these folks and we think, well, we got to, with unquenchable fire, we throw them out. But that's not what Jesus did. Jesus did the opposite. Jesus came to save the who? The lost. The lost. And so that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be reaching out to the lost, those who are looked on differently than maybe a lot of churches do. We need to be the kind of church that reaches out to those who may be looked at different than we are. That's okay. Not everybody has to look the same. And we're not called to be the judges and jury of every person. When somebody walks in this church, we need to think, well, that's Zacchaeus. And they might be hiding behind some leaves, but we need to show them the grace and the love of God. That's what Jesus does for each of us.